Welcome to Fantasy Football Today Dynasty. I am your host, Heath Cummings, and it is a one-man mailbag. Unlike the most recent version of the one-man mailbag, I'm going to try to keep my voice for the entire show. I have some great questions sent in from social media. The emails were a little bit light today, so I wanted to remind everyone, if you have a Dynasty question, please email us at fftdynasty@paramount.com. Because of my travel schedule, we have, first off, this show coming out on Wednesday, which is abnormal. And also we'll have a second one-man mailbag on July the 19th or maybe the 18th, because I'm going to be out of town that following week. So there will be more opportunities in July to get your questions answered than most months. So please go ahead and send your questions in. Like I said, I've got social media questions to get to. At the end of the show, I would like to do some chat questions. We'll see if there's any of those chat questions that show up. I know some of you probably been paying attention to the brand new Beyond the Box Score with my good friends Jacob Gibbs and Dan Schneier. Absolutely love those guys here. They're doing a fantastic job over on the new show. This will be the opposite of their show. I think Jacob said they may go 2 to 4 hours today. I may go 20 to 24 minutes. Let's jump right in. Matt heard on social media that I'm heading back to Kansas City for the Scott Fish Bowl live draft this weekend and says, who has the best Kansas City barbecue? Personally, for Matt, he says it's between Gates and Jack Stack. And I just want to say right at the start, very happy with Gates and Jack Stack. If I get to eat either one of those this weekend, I'm going to be thrilled. Fantastic barbecue. Would probably be my favorite barbecues place in about 300 different cities. But if I'm talking Kansas City barbecue, my favorite is Joe's Kansas City Barbecue. I've been fortunate enough to eat there almost every time I've been back. I actually got it delivered for the Super Bowl last year. That was fantastic. And then I'll throw a shout out also to Q39. They do things a little bit differently. If you're a barbecue traditionalist, then maybe you won't appreciate them quite as much. But I really, last time I went there, just fantastic food. And like I said, a little bit different twist on Kansas City barbecue. So my two favorites, Joe's KC and Q39. But if you get a chance to have Gates or Jack Stack or Arthur Bryant, and I'll throw one more out there. If you happen to be in Harrisonville, Missouri, and you get a chance to go to the Branding Iron, there's some really good burnt ends there as well. Second question coming in from Ryan today. He says, what is your worst Dynasty roster and how do you plan to rebuild? Now, Ryan, why would I want to talk about my worst Dynasty roster? That's not any good at all. It's not hard either for me to answer that question. And part of the reason it's my worst roster is it's a 16-team best ball league. It's only one QB. And things haven't gone very well. One of several teams where I drafted Jonathan Brooks last year. My quarterbacks in that league are Bo Nix, Justin Fields, Michael Penix, Matthew Stafford. Yes, that's too many quarterbacks for a one QB league. That's part of the problem. I will be trying to trade one of those guys for future picks. My running backs right now, Trevion Henderson, Jaylen Warren, and I don't really want to talk about the rest. But as I've talked about before, when you're going through the rebuild, running backs, not quite as important. If Jaylen Warren has a good run for even a short period of time, I will be looking to deal him as well. Wide receivers, I have Garrett Wilson, I have Zay Flowers, and I have Bupkis. Another bad position for this team. And then at tight end, I did just recently at the tight end premium league, traded up for Tyler Warren. I also have Jake Ferguson on that team. I was crushed by the Jonnu Smith trade because I also had Pat Freiermuth on that team. So I'll probably be looking to move Jake Ferguson to a contender. The plan really is build around those wide receivers and young quarterbacks. I'll probably keep Trevion Henderson, see what type of picks, probably just seconds, I can get for Jake Ferguson. Although if he starts off hot in a tight end premium league, you may squeeze a late first out of somebody. But the main plan this year is lose, get a better pick next year, hopefully have multiple picks, and move in the right direction. And I just want to say, Greg or Dean or Ryan, whoever that was, it was Ryan. Thank you for bringing up that bad memory and making me talk about my least favorite team. Fantasy football mad scientist, former guest on the show, also sends in questions for the mailbag. What a guy. We need to have him on again soon. Do you value handcuffing running backs in Dynasty? I'm 100% opposed to handcuffing my guys in redraft, but I feel like it's a must in Dynasty. I can't really agree with either one of those sentiments. I think I'm probably more handcuff agnostic in that I just don't really care that much. In both formats, I'm more likely to do it in Dynasty, but it's generally less because I'm trying to protect my RB1 and more because I'm really excited about the upside of the RB2. And so if you're in situations, and Ken Walker, Zach Charbonnet, I think is an excellent example. If you really like the RB2 and the RB1 is a great producer, I think that's a better place to do it. I don't want to roster. Another one would be Aaron Jones and Jordan Mason. Pretty excited about that duo. But I don't want to handcuff with just a mediocre running back because I'm worried about my RB1 being hurt. What I'd rather do is roster somebody else's backup that has more upside. And if that guy becomes a starter, I may all of a sudden have two running backs. Because the one thing that handcuffing does is limit your upside of the number of good running backs you could have on your team. The only way one of them becomes good is if the other one gets hurt. Not a huge fan of that type of building in any format. At the same time, at no point would I ever avoid a backup running back, just because I already had the starter. If I think it's the best player available, whether that be on waivers or in a startup or in a rookie draft or whatever, I'm going to go ahead and make that move. Dean asked a question, and I think I've had one guest on, might have been Jeff Blaylock, who has taken this approach. But Dean asks, is this year's running back class overhyped? Are they worth too much? In other words, is it better to trade the picks at this point and get actual players or future picks? He doesn't think the rookies are in the best situations for touches or timeshare, et cetera. Are they that good? And I would say I think it's probably more of a player-specific question. Overall, I do think the class is that good. I think that Genty is appropriately valued as a top 3 dynasty running back. And I took him 101 in a super flex league that was tight end premium that you had to start 2 tight ends. So basically what I'm saying is any format, I'm taking Genty 101 and I'm not trading unless somebody just completely overwhelms me. I think Trevion Henderson is probably a little bit undervalued. And yes, I think he's that good. Hampton, I have a little bit of mixed feelings on because I'm not entirely sure the upside is there based on the cost, because everybody has him as a top 10 dynasty running back. If you could, I think there's opportunities to trade that pick. Same goes for RJ Harvey, Caleb Johnson. I do think Judkins is a little bit undervalued. And then I love in round 3 just stockpiling the guys who are going to be backups, because I do think some of these guys, Jordan James is one of them, Devin Neal might be another, that would have more appeal in a different draft class. But there were so many good backs that maybe so many great backs that some of the good backs are getting pushed down to round 3. So I'm really attacking the position there. One other guy, I've said it a bunch, I think that Tutin's a little bit overvalued. But for the most part, Dean, no, I don't think the class is being overhyped. It is possible that a couple of the backs in the class are being overhyped. Leaf says, in Superflex, what's your thoughts about punting on rostering a second quarterback to build strength at other positions? In other words, how important is that second QB if he's not a top tier guy? I actually think that second and third quarterbacks are generally undervalued in startups, and they're some of the easiest pieces in season to trade when people realize that they've punted too much on quarterback. So the only way that I would be okay with doing this, if I was thinking I was taking a 2 or 3 year approach and I wanted to wait and not compete in year 1, and I plan on having a top 2 or 3 pick in 2026 or maybe again in 2027, in which case then I can fill that quarterback spot later. It's really hard, and we were able to do it last year. Last year was a rare year with what we got out of Bo Nix and maybe Michael Penix too. But it's really hard to get a solid QB2 outside of the top 2 or 3 picks of a rookie draft. So if you're trying to compete this year, I do not like this plan at all. If you're planning on starting slow and acquiring future picks and building towards 26 or 27, and you're going to have a good pick in those years, then I like the plan a little bit more. Let's take our first break. We'll see if we get any questions from the chat. I have a few more questions coming from social media. We'll be right back after this.
Get ready.
Wait a second. I thought we were going tubing.
All 3 Sonic the Hedgehog movies and Knuckles are now streaming on Paramount Plus.
And everyone loves it.
Every adventure,
Just try to keep up.
every face-off,
This ends now.
and every moment that will have you saying,
Where have you been? My entire life!
It's showtime!
all 3 Sonic the Hedgehog movies and the entire Sonic universe are now streaming on Paramount Plus.
So we do have a couple questions already in the chat. I will say, if you've been sitting on that Dynasty question thinking, I never get my question answered, today is a great day to do that. So if you have a question, put it in the chat. Let's get to some of our post-break questions from social media. DJ says, I'm strong at wide receiver, but weak at running back and tight end. What should I realistically target as a return for A.J. Brown? So I'm just going to go to the trade chart. In the super flex trade chart, and the running backs and tight ends are all going to be the same in both, so it doesn't really matter. But in my super flex trade chart, which is available over on Sportsline, the running backs that I have just ahead of A.J. Brown, I would be seeing if I could get someone like a Jonathan Taylor. I think the interesting thing about trading Brown is you've probably got a 3-year window, and most of these running backs, you probably have a 3-year window. Then there's 3 guys directly above Brown that I think you could probably get these guys plus a little bit, depending on how confident you are in them. Chase Brown, Bucky Irving, Breece Hall. It seems like everybody has one or maybe 2 of those guys they really believe in, and one of them they're really skeptical of. So those 4 guys, Taylor, Brown, Irving, Hall, are kind of the guys that I would probably be targeting. I think the way that Kyren Williams' value has fallen as of late means you could probably get Kyren Williams plus for an A.J. Brown. If you're really in a win now situation and you wanted to try to go make the trade for Saquon Barkley, I think Barkley's probably better for winning this year. It's just unlike those other younger backs, you might have a 1 or 2 year window with Barkley. And so you're probably giving up something in 2027, 2028 by letting go of A.J. Brown, who likely has at least 3 good years left. If you really wanted to stretch, Achane would be somebody that I would look at as well. In terms of the tight ends, I value both Brock Bowers and Trey McBride pretty significantly more than A.J. Brown, and then nobody else really all that close to him. So I think you're either getting one of the rookie tight ends and maybe getting a second-round pick or a couple of seconds in addition to that for A.J. Brown, or you should not be trading A.J. Brown for any of the other veteran tight ends. Michael asks, how do you value? Now you put B. Smith, Jay Sanders, and Jay Mason. So I've done some reasoning here. I think I've decided which these guys are. Jordan Mason is my RB 33 in Dynasty, and I think a fantastic buy. I was thrilled to find him on the waiver wire in that super flex tight end premium league I was talking about. Those waivers run on Sunday night. I think some of those people might listen to this show, but I've made a significant investment to try to add him. And I would maybe even consider giving up a second-round pick for him on a team where I was really desperate for running back help. I think Mason could be a flex for as long as Jones is healthy, and Mason could be a league winner if something happens to Aaron Jones. Brashard Smith is my RB 69, probably someone that's better saved for round 4, but I've taken him in round 3 of a couple of rookie drafts. It's really going to come down to how much the Chiefs trust him early in his career. He's explosive with the ball in his hand. They've got to trust him enough to have him on the field on passing downs though as well. If they do, he could maybe match some of what Jerick McKinnon did in that role, which was very, very useful in full PPR leagues. And then Jatavian Sanders is who the Jay Sanders I would assume would be. He's my tight end 19, a good second tight end with upside, but also without much of a projection. I wouldn't want him to be my starter going into this year, and I don't think you have any guarantee that he's going to be a starter in the future, but there's hope there. So Jatavian Sanders, I wouldn't trade more than a round 3 pick for him. Chris asks, and we get this question every once in a while. Sometimes we get keeper league questions on the Dynasty show, and you guys have indicated you don't want me to answer those too often, so I don't. But do you consider keeper leagues where you keep 3 or 4 players more like Dynasty or more like redraft? I would say they're more like redraft 90% of the year and a little more like Dynasty during those weeks where you're trying to decide who to keep. But for the most part, that's more of a redraft focus. You are trying to win. you should always at the end of the year have 3 or 4 guys you want to keep. So you don't have to worry too much about that accumulation of assets. More redraft with a little touch of dynasty. See if you can get the league to add 2 more keepers and then add 2 more the next year. Eventually you'll have a dynasty league. It will be awesome. One more question from Joey on social media. Would you trade Pat Bryant and a 27-second for George Pickens? This is probably an obvious yes to a lot of you guys. I've been a little more skeptical of Pickens in Dallas, but I would 100% do this. Go make this trade. So much upside with Pickens if things do work out. Let's check and see what kind of questions we have from the chat, and we'll just start at the top. Austin says, I was offered Ladd McConkey and Jaden Daniels for Malik Neighbors. My quarterbacks are J.J. McCarthy and Daniel Jones, but it's a single QB league. Wow, I don't see a lot of one QB trade questions that involve quarterbacks. So I just want to look at the trade chart, and I'll tell you, my initial instinct is smash accept. I have Neighbors though worth 40 points. McConkey's only worth 26. So's Jaden Daniels in my one QB chart. He's my number 1 quarterback in Dynasty. Smash accept. The initial reaction is matched by the trade chart. I think you get a lot better at quarterback and maybe just a little bit worse at wide receiver. Matt in the chat, Waddle or DK in full PPR. I think this one's probably close enough to where, are you trying to win this year or not? I do like DK Metcalf more this year. I currently have him at wide receiver 25 in my dynasty rankings. Waddle's moved up a little bit since the June update because of the Jonnu Smith trade. He's up to wide receiver 26. He's only a year younger than DK Metcalf, and I like Metcalf more this year. They both have a little bit of quarterback uncertainty. I'd probably go ahead and take that year and take Waddle if I wasn't a real contender this year. If I'm contending this year, I'm definitely taking DK Metcalf. Jordan has a long question. We've got time today, Jordan, for long questions. 12-team Superflex League. I have Trevor Lawrence and Brian Thomas Jr. I'm in a position to get Travis Hunter if I wanted. I'm considering rolling the dice and selling Brian Thomas Jr. for a big upgrade at maybe quarterback or running back and drafting Hunter to replace him. Thoughts? There's a little bit of risk there because Brian Thomas Jr. has already shown us that he is elite. As I've said many times, I'm very open to the potential that Travis Hunter will also be elite, but we haven't seen it yet. So you're taking a risk there. It depends on how big of an upgrade you can get at the quarterback or running back position. If you can go get, Jaden Daniels plus, then yes, I'd be really, really happy to do that. If you're a rebuilding team, I'm probably not going after a running back, but if you're a contending team and you want to try to turn Thomas into a running back, just look at the guys that I've got. Devon Achane and Jahmyr Gibbs right in that same range. So if you could turn Thomas into one of those guys and then add Travis Hunter to replace him, I like that strategy quite a bit, actually, especially if you're contending this year. And we've had this question before. I'll just go ahead and say it again. I wouldn't be bothered at all if I had Trevor Lawrence and Brian Thomas Jr. with adding Travis Hunter to that team. I think both those guys can be very good. We got a question from Alberto. How do you feel about Scadaboo, the way he's being valued? He's being valued appropriately. I think he's a second-round pick. He's a bench running back in redraft. He's a second-round pick in rookie drafts. I expect at some point this year, he's going to take the majority of the touches from Tyrone Tracy. It's not guaranteed, but I don't think Tracy's going to stand in his way if he does what he should. I think he's being valued appropriately at this time, though. Kevin says, how many position players would you take over Cam Ward if you were in Superflex, if you're set at the quarterback position? So in my Superflex rookie rankings, I do have Cam Ward as the 102. That being said, if I was totally set, and a lot of people don't have Ward as the 102, so I'd be hesitant to trade down. I would take Travis Hunter. If I was really desperate for a running back, I'd be okay taking Henderson or Hampton. So I guess that's 3. If it was a true tight end premium league where you're getting double the points for catches, then someone like Colston Loveland or Tyler Warren, whoever your favorite is at tight end, might come into the equation. But for the most part, for me, it would be Hunter, Henderson, and Hampton. And I would still feel like I was giving up a little bit of value in making that deal. Jordan, have Caleb and Trevor Lawrence considering drafting a QB3 in Ward, or scoop by and wait for Manning next year. Thoughts? I want to have 3 quarterbacks. So if you're in a super flex league and Caleb and Lawrence are your only 2 quarterbacks, I would be adding Cam Ward. We've got a question about Anthony Richardson, who I just took in our redraft mock draft with the penultimate pick of the draft, I believe it was, or maybe it was one pick earlier than that. But the very last round, round 14, I took Richardson as my backup to Baker Mayfield. I would advise you don't see him in a lot of ADPs. People have just kind of forgotten about him, but the upside's still there. So if he's there in the last round, take him. But he says, if he's my QB2 in Superflex with no QB depth, would you be trying to trade for Daniel Jones? I'd rather not, but you're talking about trading a 2027 second round pick. You're not going to get a guaranteed starter for that. So if you're a contender and you're trying to make sure that you still have 2 quarterbacks for this year, I think that makes sense. I mean, most of the people we've had on FFT Dynasty are way more excited about that 2027 class than they are 2026. So giving up the second, if you had a bad year in 2026, that could end up hurting a little bit. But yeah, I think if you're contending this year, that's probably the cheapest quarterback to acquire, unless you want to do a price check on an Aaron Rodgers or a Russell Wilson. Tyler, we had another George Pickens question. How do I value George Pickens? Better in Dynasty than I do in redraft. He's my wide receiver 28 in Dynasty. So he's right behind Emeka Buka, Matthew Golden, Jalen Waddle, DK Metcalf, Jamison Williams. Pickens just ahead of DJ Moore, Luther Burden, Chris Olave, Tyreek Hill. So that's kind of the range he is. An upside wide receiver 3, which is what George Pickens has been for most of his career. We hear, have you heard about any sleeper target stashes for Dynasty that people haven't heard of? So not that people haven't heard of. No, I don't think so. You mentioned Gadsden there, though, and I do think he's probably one of the biggest climbers. Efton Chisholm had the week or so where he was really posting really exciting highlights on Twitter. I'm not sure that that's going to be a thing, but no, we're at the point now where it's July and everybody's pretty much heard of everybody. I don't think you're going to find any unknowns, but certainly. We do have one more question here, it looks like, at least from the chat. Michael says, oh, I hit it twice. I'm one piece away from winning it all, but feel like this year I'm 10 of 10. Would you trade away Derrick Henry, Jalen Wright, and Drake London? I assume that's Derrick Henry. I guess it could be Hunter because Kittle's the first name there. Then Achane and Swift. So he's deep at wide receiver, trading away Henry, Wright, and London for Kittle, Achane, and Swift. Achane's my RB1 in my projections and my RB2 in my rankings this year. So I think even though he's young, he's a great win now piece. That's a huge upgrade at tight end, getting George Kittle. You all know how I feel about DeAndre Swift. I think you have to decide if you're where I am on both London and Achane. But if you are, then I would absolutely do that deal. Yes. Let's see if we have any more questions or if we are ready to go. I think I should talk until I lose my voice, right? That's just kind of the way we do things here. Okay, one more. Jeff wants to, don't make me tell you that you gave away too much when it's already over, Jeff. Jeff, did I trade too much for Jonathan Taylor? Full PPR 12-team Dynasty League, traded a 2026 first and a 2026 second for Jonathan Taylor. I don't, as long as you have a roster that makes sense, I don't think so at all. Now, trading next year's first this time of year is a really dangerous thing if you don't, because you might think I have the 4th best team and now I'm adding Jonathan Taylor. It's good to go. I've still seen that end up as a top 3 or 4 pick. So I would want to feel like if I'm trading both my first and my second, and there's one league where I've already done that. I've traded my first, my second, and my third. I'm not totally against it, but I would want to feel like I'm moving my team from a top 2 team to definitely the best team in the league. If Jonathan Taylor's doing that for you, I don't think this is too much. the question really can't be answered right now. The question's going to be answered when we see how high that 2026 pick is at the end of this year. Look at your roster, look at the rest of your league, and see, how many things have to go wrong for this team to just blow up? And if it's more than, I would say, 4, then good to go. Go make the deal. If you can look and say, man, if these 2 guys get hurt, I'm sunk, then no, I'm out on trading away that 2026 first. Yeah, we'll finish off with Chris saying, thank you, Heath. Chris, thank you. Thank you to everybody who was active in the chat today, who sent in questions on social media. It's been a great time. I didn't lose my voice. I won't be here Friday. I'm going to Kansas City. I'm going to draft the best Scott Fishbowl team you've ever seen. Probably not, but I can't wait to talk to you about it on Tuesday.